In this video, we will be discussing about reproduction and how reproduction happens. Some organisms reproduce asexually, which all genes come from a single parent. The offsprings are genetically identical to the parents. One method of asexual reproduction is cell division. The cell makes a copy of its DNA, then sends it to the new bacterial cell. Some bacteria can reproduce as fast as 20 minutes. Another method is budding. It happens when new cell grows off the side of another. An example of this happens in the yeast. Another method is fission or splitting. An example of this happens in the sea anemone. It can split in the middle and result to an exact copy of its parent. The goal of many animals is to live long enough to reproduce and pass their genes on to their offspring. Almost all animals go through the process of sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is when one male and female sex cell comes together to form an offspring. The male reproductive cell is called the sperm cell, and the female reproductive cell is called the egg cell. Both contain 50% of genes. When the two cells go together, it is called fertilization. Internal fertilization happens when the offspring is developed inside the body. External fertilization happens when the offspring is developed outside the body. That happens with fish. This is the testicles or the testes. It is enclosed in a sac called the scrotum. The scrotum helps keep the testicles at a temperature lower than 40 degrees body temperature. This is important since the sperm cell is produced in the seminiferous tubules located in the testicles. The epididymis is a system of tubes that connects the testes to the vas deferens. It is responsible for sending the sperm into the vas deferens. The vas deferens is connected to the seminal vesicle under the prostate gland. The seminal vesicle and the prostate gland release secretions to the sperm that releases semen. The ejaculatory duct carries the sperm into the urethra located in the penis. The penis contains erectile tissue and becomes erect during sexual arousal. Cowper's gland prepares the urethra for ejaculation of the semen. This is the female reproductive system. The outer part is the labia majora and the labia minora. The clitoris is the counterpart of the penis and is composed of erectile tissues. Just as males have 2 testicles, females have 2 ovaries. The ovaries produce hormones such as estrogen and progesterone. Every month, 1 mature egg enters the fallopian tubes and travels to the uterus. Every month, the endometrium is nourished with blood and fluid to prepare for a fertilized egg. If it is not fertilized, it is discharged from the uterus along with the lining and is known as menstruation. The uterus is connected to the vagina by the cervix. Oogenesis begins with a diploid germ cell, which is divided by mitosis to produce a diploid oogonium. The oogonium undergoes mitosis to produce a diploid oocyte. The first meiotic division produces 2 haploid cells, each with 23 chromosomes. One of these cells, called the secondary oocyte, receives almost all of the cytoplasm. The other cell is called the polar body, which is basically a non-functional cell. The polar body may either disintegrate or divide again. The polar bodies are a way of disposing chromosomes while ensuring that the majority of the cytoplasm is retained in the cell that will become the egg. The secondary oocyte begins meiosis II but stops at metaphase II. Then the secondary oocyte leaves the ovary and enters a uterine tube. Spermatogenesis. The testis is organized into a network of seminiferous tubules where spermatogenesis occurs. Spermatogenesis is the production of the mature haploid sperm cells through meiotic cell division. A spermatogonium deep in the epithelium of the seminiferous tubules give rise to a primary spermatocyte. This contains 46 chromosomes. A primary spermatocyte undergoes the first meiotic cell division, producing 2 identical secondary spermatocytes that has 23 chromosomes. The secondary spermatocyte completes meiosis, giving rise to haploid spermatids, each spermatids containing 23 chromosomes. Then spermatids develop into mature sperm. You may have different types of discharge throughout your menstrual cycle. The discharge changes happen in the vaginal opening called vulva. The cervix produces different types of mucus that changes hormonal levels. The cycle begins with menstrual bleeding, when the endometrium is shed. The cervix is being blocked by different types of mucus that prevent sperm from entering the uterus. This means that you are infertile. The number of days that you experience is an unchanging pattern that determines the length of cycle. If your cycle is short, you may not experience much of this infertile pattern. If your cycle is long, you may have more. The pituitary gland in the brain begins to secrete a hormone called follicle-stimulating hormone, or FSH. This stimulates the growth of a group of follicles in your body. Each follicle contains an egg and a bundle of surrounding cells that secrete estrogen. Estrogen activates the cervix to produce the mucus essential for fertility. This is the start of the fertile phase. Fertile phase, shown using a baby symbol, begins before ovulation. One type of mucus dissolves the plug, which means sperm can now enter the uterus. Another type of mucus filters out damaged sperm cells. Another nourishes the sperm, so they can live for up to 5 days in the reproductive system. It forms channels which helps the sperm travel through your reproductive system to meet and fertilize the egg. You can observe that you feel wet and slippery. The mucus becomes thinner and clearer. The last day of the slippery feeling is called the peak of fertility. It is very close to the time of ovulation. If fertilization doesn't occur, the egg will die. But if the sperm meets the egg, fertilization will take place. After ovulation, the empty follicle is transformed into the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum produces hormones called progesterone. It prepares the endometrium in case there is a fertilized egg ready to implant. Millions of sperm are released during a single ejaculation. Their tails propel their journey to encounter an egg cell. Although there are millions of sperm, only a few will survive to reach the egg, and just one will penetrate the egg cell wall to combine its genetic material with that of the egg, and the process is called fertilization.
Immediately after implantation, the inner cell of the blastocyst starts differentiating the primary germ layers called gastrulation. The cells of the inner cell divide and rearrange to an outer layer called ectoderm and an inner layer called endoderm. During gastrulation, some cells that are moving inward contribute to form the mesoderm. The embryo is now called the gastrula. Gastrulation establishes the body pattern that is each tissue of an organ of the adult originates in one of the 3 primary germs of the gastrula. The ectoderm gives rise to the epidermal tissue, nervous tissue, retina, lens, cornea, and others. The endoderm forms the inner lining of the digestive tract, liver, pancreas, urinary bladder, urethra, inner lining of the respiratory system, and vagina. The mesoderm gives rise to the dermis, all types of muscular tissue, and various collective tissues. The development of the major organ systems is called organogenesis. stem cells are purely potent, that means they can give rise to all of the tissues except those of the placenta and the extraembryonic membranes. The developing embryo is protected by a fetal membrane. These are the yolk sac, amnion, chorion, allantois. They are northern part of the embryo and are called extraembryonic membranes. The extraembryonic membranes protects the embryo. It prevents from dying out and helps in obtaining food and oxygen, and it also eliminates waste. Amniotic cavity is the closed sac between the embryo and the amnion contains the amniotic fluid.
The amniotic fluid acts as a cushion for the developing embryo and protects it from external blows. The amniotic fluid contains fetal cells in a process called amniocentesis. The amniotic fluid is drawn up and examined to detect any abnormalities in the fetus. Embryonic development in humans is divided into 3 trimesters spanning a period of about 280 days or 9 calendar months plus 10 days. This period is accounted from the first day of the last menstrual cycle until parturition and is called the gestation period. In the human embryo, the heart is formed after 1 month of pregnancy. The limbs and digits were formed toward the end of the 2nd month. Most of the organs develop during the 3rd month. During the 5th month, the fetus shows signs of movement and appearance of the hair on the head. During the 6th month, the formation of hair, eyelashes, and separation of eyelids are formed. In the 9th month, the fully developed fetus is ready for delivery. In the weeks before birth, the female body decreases progesterone production and increases production of other hormones like prostaglandins that softens the cervix and oxytocin that causes the uterus muscles to contract. Labor contractions are rhythmic and painful. The uterus long muscles tighten and the top muscles push down, guiding the baby towards the cervix. The mucus plug, the collection of thick and cervical mucus that seal the cervix for 9 months, is expelled days before or during birth. When the amniotic sac ruptures, your water has broken. The cervix undergoes dilation and effacement, or the opening and thinning. When it reaches about 4 centimeters, your body will move into active labor. In active labor, contractions become stronger and closer together. At 8 centimeters, transition happens. It is the most painful part of labor. At 10 centimeters, you're fully dilated and you may feel the urge to push. The baby will move down with each contraction. The 3 bones of the baby's skull will overlap. And slowly, after several pushes, the baby will be born. And the placenta is detached. If during the first week the fertilized egg or zygote divides into 2 zygotes, identical twins will be formed. Each developing embryo contains the same genetic material as the other. Endometriosis is a disorder of the female reproductive system. The uterus is composed of three layers: the perimetrium, the outer layer, the myometrium, the middle layer, and the endometrium, the inner layer. During menstruation, the endometrium thickens to prepare for implantation of a fertilized egg. When the endometrium reaches its full thickness, an egg is released from the ovaries. If the egg is fertilized, it attaches to the thickened endometrium. If the egg is not fertilized, the endometrium layer is flopped off as a normal part of menstruation. Endometriosis is a condition in which endometrial cells become attached to tissues surrounding the uterus, such as the fallopian tube, ovaries, or the large or small intestines. During the portion of the menstrual cycle in which the endometrium layer grows, the cells outside the uterus also grows. When ovulation occurs and the egg is not fertilized, the endometrium cells flopped off inside and outside the uterus causes bleeding, cramps, and pain. Endometriosis also affects the woman's fertility.
AIDS stands for Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, which means deficient immune system. You get AIDS after becoming infected with the HIV virus. You get infected with the virus by unsafe sex, contact with blood of an infected person, for example by using a contaminated injection needle, from mother to child during pregnancy, childbirth, or breastfeeding. Because the virus is transmitted through blood, sperm, vaginal fluids, pre-seminal fluids, and breast milk. You don't have the risk of becoming infected with the virus by saliva or shaking hands. When you have HIV virus but aren't symptomatic yet, you are seropositive. This means that there are HIV antibodies in your blood. You don't need to have any signs of disease yet. An HIV infection passes through 4 stages. In the first stage, the body can show signs of disease like continuous fever and swollen glands. While some people who are infected remain asymptomatic in the first stage. In the second stage, recurring airway infections, skin, mouth, and congenital lesions often occur. In the third stage, you may have complaints like prolonged diarrhea, excessive weight loss, tuberculosis in the lungs, and other serious infections like meningitis. Finally, besides serious infections, the nervous system may be affected in the fourth stage, which can result in motor loss or AIDS-related dementia. It may take 5 to 15 years before you know that you have got AIDS. This is because sometimes it takes longer for symptoms to occur. HIV and AIDS can be treated with medication but can't be cured.
A vaginal yeast infection is mostly caused by Candida albicans. Candida albicans is the name of the yeast and is often considered as a fungus. Candida albicans lives naturally in the vagina. Together with bacteria, Candida maintains the natural balance in the vagina. Under certain circumstances, this balance can get disrupted. The fungus can start to grow excessively and an infection occurs. There are risks of developing vaginal infection. If Candida causes infection, it can manifest in the vagina as well as on the labia. These are the symptoms of vaginal candidiasis. There are usually vague complaints. A vaginal yeast infection sometimes doesn't produce any symptoms, so treatments are not required in such cases. Based on your complaints and external features on your general practitioner can make you a diagnosis.
Female sterilization, or tubal ligation, is the process of removing a short section from each oviduct, often tying the remaining ends. Male sterilization, or vasectomy, is the process of cutting a section out of each vas deferens to prevent sperm from reaching the urethra. Oral contraceptives, or birth control pills, contain synthetic estrogen and progesterone. These hormones prevent the hypothalamus to send signals that start development of an ovarian follicle. Ovulation ceases, preventing pregnancy. Morning after pills, if taken within 3 days after unprotected intercourse, it's 75% effective in preventing pregnancy. However, they have significant side effects. Male condoms are thin latex sheets that fit over the penis. This is a type of barrier device. A female condom is a polyurethane sheet with 2 flexible rings. It is not restricting in the vagina when worn and is a great barrier protection for STDs. Diaphragm is a dome-shaped rubber cap that covers the cervix. It requires a doctor's visit for proper fitting and it is best used with spermicides. Test tube babies. The procedure involves hormonally controlling the ovulatory process, leaving the eggs in the ovary and fertilizing the sperm using a petri dish. They get eggs from the female and fertilizes it. The fertilized egg is placed in the uterus. The egg is fertilized by the sperm at the rate of 1:75,000. Once a fertilized egg is produced, the cell division of the embryo occurs. At this point, it is possible to freeze the embryo, possible for IVF treatment. 2 or 3 embryos are then transferred to the uterus by fine plastic tube. Note of the pregnancy to be normal. It is also possible to fertilize an egg by the presence known as intracytoplasmic injection of the sperm. This microscopic procedure involves letting a single sperm that is injected into the egg